Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series with the New York Yankees. And we are about to begin the free agency period for 2025. Our goal is to get the Yankees back to the playoffs next year. We also have a manager, or actually more accurate, ownership goal to upgrade center field. And we're actually looking to do that more because we think it's the right thing than because Hal Steinbrenner has asked us to do it, quite honestly. We've put out a couple of trade offers to bring a center fielder onto our team. Hopefully we'll be hearing back on those offers in the next few days. One is a familiar name, one is a unfamiliar name for this playthrough. But as good as Everson Pereira was last year, I don't think he's really what we want in center field for the medium term defensively. So we are going to look at some options that way. I think we're probably going to stick with the infielders that we have right now. Shortstop is a potential position we could look to upgrade, given that we played Volpe at second last year. But I think it's very conceivable if we pivot Volpe back to short between Oswaldo Cabrera, Nick Madrigal, and perhaps most importantly, Oswald Peraza. I think we still have second base covered, and then we'd have Glaber at third and Austin Wells at first. Towards the end of our last episode, we made a trade for Miguel Amaya, who should become our starting catcher, above average defensively with a bat that seems respectable. We've got him in a training program right now working on his strength and conditioning. So hopefully between him and Ali Sanchez we'll be set at that position. So then that takes us to the outfield, and Soto and Judge obviously in left and right. Maybe one of them at DH ultimately. And then we can play Pereira at a corner outfield spot. But I feel like we probably don't have too much to do if we're able to pick up a center fielder that we like. But we do have some holes in the pitching staff. We're not as deep as we need to be. You can see we've only got 11 pitchers on the 40-man roster at this point. We've traded away some and let some leave in free agency. But fortunately, there's a interesting crop of free agent pitchers, starters available this year, and we've got money to spend. I think without question, the highest end starter out there is Brandon Woodruff, but he's going to be 33 before the season starts. He's fragile physically, and he's looking for 5 years at $30 million a year. So I think we're going to kind of go more volume than quality. Hopefully we'll get some quality as well as the volume, but we're not going to play right at the top end of the pitchers who are available this year. We're still waiting for an updated scouting report on Mauricio the Snake Serna, an international free agent coming over from Cuba. We only have low scouting accuracy on him, and he's looking for $27 million a year, so that's not a price we're going to hit quite yet. Dylan Cease and John Gray also looking for pretty solid money. But given that we've got Blake Snell, Garrett Cole, and Carlos Rodon at the top of our rotation, we're really just looking more for health and depth. And I think Griffin Canning could be a solid fourth starter. I like his ratings profile, and we've got very high scouting accuracy. That said, he's been a below-average pitcher over the course of his career. But his Sierra of 3.31 is materially lower than the 4.91 ERA that he's put up. And he's not looking for a ton of money, $10.7 million a year. So I think we're going to make an offer to him. And then I think we're also going to try to bring on Lucas Giolito, another guy who is more of a back-end starter at this point, coming off of a rough year in Boston. 5-5 with a 5.71 ERA. He has actually been also a bit below average over the course of his career, but another guy whose Sierra of 3.40 is more than a run better than his actual earned run average. not looking for a ton of money and not looking for that many years either. And I think, honestly, if we were able to have Giolito and Canning as our fourth and fifth starters, that lets us put the likes of Clark Schmidt and Will Warren into kind of more middle and long relief roles, assuming that we keep both of them. And they are each involved in one of the trades for the center fielders that I mentioned. So that will potentially weaken our depth a bit to possibly lose one of those guys. But I still think if we backfill the 4 and 5 spots with Canning and Giolito, feel a lot better about the rest of our pitching staff. Canning looking for $10.7 million a year over 5 years, only 29 years old. I think I don't want to give him quite as much money. And given that we've got a lot of money to spend this year, I am going to try to front load both of these contracts a bit, which the players shouldn't really have much problem with. He's looking for a player option in the final season. I think I'm more likely to try to make that a team option. But we'll see what we can come up with here. And Canning was looking for $10.7 a year over 5 years. We're offering him $10.2 over 5 years. It's just very front-loaded with $15 million this first year and then $9 a year after that. And we did flip the last year from a player option to a team option and didn't promise him a role, although we bumped up his all-star bonus slightly. Not surprisingly, he's willing to think about this, so we're going to submit that offer to Griffin Canning. And then move on to our other pitching target, Lucas Giolito, who's not looking for quite as long a contract or quite as much money, $9.5 million over 3 years, also looking for a player option in the final season. In Giolito, we're fronting a little bit as well, front loading a little bit. He was looking for 9.5. We're offering him 8.7. Flip the player option to a team option in the final season. He also wanted a no-trade clause and a promised role in the starting rotation, and he also wanted a $750,000 bonus if he pitched 160 innings. So we've taken away more that he was looking for than we did with Canning. Not sure exactly how he'll react to this. I think there's a chance he'll think about it, but it may require further negotiation. He's willing to think about it as well. So 2 slightly front-loaded deals to bring on 4th and 5th starters really help the strength of our rotation and the depth of our rotation. If we're able to do that, then it's just a matter of perhaps making one of these trades that we've been thinking about for a center fielder, and the heavy lifting will possibly be done. And we've heard back on both of the trade offers that we've made. One that we're looking for, and this is the name that we're familiar with in this series because we looked at him as a free agent last offseason, is Cody Bellinger. Had a respectable year with Washington, was an average offensive player, 18 homers, 76 ribbies, 12 steals, put up a 2.3 WAR, still a pretty respectable defensive center fielder, making $16.4 million a year for the next 5 seasons. So it's a reasonably material commitment. And we were going to have to give up the minor league right fielder Aaron Polensky, who's not a bad profile, but he's 27 years old, not a big part of our future. George Lombard Jr., a third baseman who's a decent prospect, but again, not an incredible prospect. And then Will Warren, who we talked about, is a solid 5th starter. I don't know what else he is more than that at this point. Finally got a cup of coffee with the Yankees at the end of this past season. Don't love the low work ethic. But even with offering that package to get them to retain 30% of Bellinger's contract, we also have to include a pretty good player or a pretty good prospect. So I don't know if that makes sense. The other guy that we're looking at is Dalton Varsho, and also getting his previous team, the Blue Jays, to retain 30% The issue with Varsho, though, is that he's actually in the final year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent after this season. Really like him defensively. The bat is intriguing, but honestly, I don't know that it's been as good at the majors as I would hope. Looking at his profile, he's been a slightly below average offensive player. I look at a guy with 60 power and decent contact and would think maybe he could be a little more than that. Now, he is a left-handed hitter. He's pretty good against righties, and he may benefit from playing half of his games in Yankee Stadium. So I think that there's something to like here. We have to give up Polensky, same as before. Matt Reynolds, a veteran second baseman who we signed to a minor league contract. But then two more significant players, Clark Schmidt, our fifth starter. He's similar to Will Warren, kind of like his personality, a little bit better, but he also makes more money than Will Warren does. But then we also have to give up the minor league catcher, Jesus Rodriguez, who's a decent catching prospect. Hit 293 in Double-A for us this year after hitting 341 in High A ball the year before. Looks like he's a slightly above average defensive catcher with a bat that could be close to major league average and decent speed for a catcher. So kind of an interesting profile. Might only end up being a backup, but it's not inconceivable he could start for us down the line. Now, fortunately, to get this deal done, we basically just need to throw in a marginal prospect or a veteran that we signed to a minor league contract who happens to be in our system. So we can get this deal done a little more easily, but the price is certainly higher than it is for Bellinger, because I like Schmidt a little more than I like Warren, I think. And then we also have to include a pretty interesting catching prospect in the deal for Varsho. So I'm still not sure which way to go, and I'm probably just going to continue negotiating these two trades a little further. All right, we've restructured our offers to both the Blue Jays and the Nationals on Varsho and Bellinger, and we basically including the same players in each deal. Polensky, minor league starter, Luis Serna, minor league third baseman, Jay Savina. We decided to include Clark Schmidt in both deals instead of Will Warren, although I like Clark Schmidt a little better now. He's a guy who we're hoping to push out of the rotation with the offers that we've made to free agents. And he's going to be due to make around $5 million next year. The season after next, more accurately, when he'll be 31 years old, and we're kind of viewing him as a middle or long reliever. So I think Warren is just better value for us at this point. And then we have to include a couple veterans as well. Still need to throw in a body in the Toronto proposal to get it done, but that would bring us Varsho for a year, and they'd keep 25% of his salary. The offer that we made for Bellinger is pretty much the exact same package, but we also added in a minor league first baseman, Bo Brewer, not a big-time prospect, and some negative personality traits I would just as soon get out of our organization. And we were looking for them to keep 40% of Bellinger's contract, which would make it fairly palatable for us. But in order to get that done, we've still got to add in a pretty good player or a pretty good prospect. So I think the question is ultimately, do we have a strong preference between Bellinger and Varsho? Bellinger's about a year older, and it's a longer-term commitment to Bellinger than it is to Varsho, who will be a free agent after this year. They're both left-handed hitters. Looking at the batting ratings, I guess you favor Varsho a little bit with the extra home run power. Neither is great against left-handed pitchers, but they're both certainly playable against right-handed pitchers. Varsho's a little better on the base paths. Bellinger's a little better bunter when all is said and done. So they're really pretty darn even. And then defensively, Varsho a little better range and error, and their arms are basically the same. I wouldn't mind locking Bellinger in, especially if we could have got Washington to pay 35-40% of his contract. We'd be on the hook for $10 million, a little less, depending on what number we ended up agreeing on with them. But I do really like the idea of just keeping our options open. We're making an improvement for next year. We're getting basically, I think, pretty similar fielding to what we had with Trent Grisham last year, and a bat that should certainly be more productive than Grisham's, even if it's not necessarily an incredible bat. And if Varsho ends up being a huge success, we can always try to sign him at the end of next season. And I think it's conceivable that we've seen that Bellinger's price is not exorbitant. So I think it's conceivable that we could make a play for Bellinger a year from now if we decided to move on from Varsho because he didn't work out. But I think I'm leaning towards the shorter-term commitment, just bringing on Varsho for this upcoming year. It'll also give us a third lefty in the lineup, along with Juan Soto and Austin Wells. And he's got a little more pop in his bat, as we said, as far as the home runs than Bellinger does. So I think there is an argument to be made that he could be a little more productive at home in Yankee Stadium. So we're going to just figure out which one of these very mediocre prospects we want to send Toronto's way. And then we're going to have a new center fielder for next year. And we'll just need to see what can happen with these two starting pitchers that we've made offers to. And when we added the young center fielder Jose Castro into the deal, who's not a major big-time prospect, we were actually able to even get Toronto to keep an extra 5%. Not that we care that much because it's only a one-year deal, but every little bit extra that we have for scouting and player development or to take on contracts down the line is better than not having it. So we're going to go ahead and complete the trade. And Dalton Varsho is our new center fielder. And we've simmed ahead about a week to December. Still haven't gotten any feedback at all from Griffin Canning or Lucas Giolito about the offers we made for them to become our fourth and fifth starters. Clearly with the fact that we've traded away Clark, we've got an even bigger need to hopefully bring both of these guys on board. You can see we've still got over $30 million available with those offers outstanding and the fact that we brought on Varsho. So we're really not in a bad financial situation. I don't think we need to do much else, but if one of the better infielder prospects, maybe a Tommy Edman, is still sitting on the market in a couple of months, maybe we look to bring him on board as a utility guy. It would be an expensive utility guy, and I don't think we want to necessarily do it for 4 years. But if he's willing to come on for a shorter contract, that might be something to consider. And then pitcher-wise, I'd love to eventually be able to make a play for one of the higher-end relievers, but we're not going to be spending 18 or 23 million a year on a reliever, even though we are the Yankees. I don't see that happening. I mean, if one of them was on the market in 2 months and they wanted 15, 20 million and would do it for a 1-year deal, it probably makes sense to spend the money rather than not, given that we are in win now mode. Still waiting for the scouting report on Cerna. So we'll see what happens with Canning and Giolito. And even if we get them signed, we're going to have money to at least be players if we decide we want to add some more talent as the offseason continues to move along. And the winter meetings start today on December 9th. Did finally get some input from Canning and Giolito, and they both say they're leaning towards our offers. Still no guarantees at this point, but until we hear back from them, we're in the driver's seat, or at least we think we are. And we moved ahead past the end of the winter meetings to the Rule 5 draft. Still haven't heard anything else from Canning and Giolito. They claim to like our offers, but they're certainly not signing them quite yet. Hopefully we'll get them both locked up before the end of the month, but right now we'll turn our attention to the Rule 5 draft. We are going to be picking 18th. Certainly would think if there's a arm or two for the bullpen, that would be really interesting, and usually you can find some potential bullpen arms in the Rule 5. So we're going to go ahead and start the draft. I have a feeling we'll have some players picked off of us. We have some decent veterans who we signed to minor league contracts before last year. Didn't want to put them on the 40-man roster, but I could definitely see some of them being attractive options for some of the lower quality teams in the league. And Kevin Biggio was certainly one that I thought might be on the list. Just didn't see him having a big role for us. He's going to be 31 by the time the season gets underway. Okay bat, okay defensively, really good personality, but didn't want to guarantee him a major league contract, but figured he was someone we could be losing, and we did lose him. So we've made it to our pick here, and take a look first at the batters with the highest potential out there, and there's certainly no one who jumps off the page in terms of the potential current ability. There are several players that we can consider. Some interesting defensive players. The catcher, Will Banfield, really like that defense. The bat's not great. He's never played above Double-A ball. Have a hard time believing he could take over for Ali Sanchez as our backup, but we'll investigate the options. Pitching-wise, also no one who in terms of their overall ability or potential really jumps off the page. But we're going to kind of see what's out there. And likely we'll be picking a player or two to at least get some competition in the spring. We've got our eye on a few pitchers. We'll see what our scouting director recommends. He recommends the closer, Taylor Clark. He was a guy that we looked at. I think he's fine. He's just a guy. I don't think he's the direction we're going to go. I would consider him, if he's still sitting around on the market, in a round or two. But right now I think we're going to go with the 27-year-old Anthony Maldonado. Has a little bit of major league experience. Pretty interesting stuff with a plus curve and a plus fastball. Not a great pitcher, but in his limited major league action at this point, he's been an above average player both years in terms of his ERA plus and his FIP minus. I don't think there's any guarantees that Maldonado will even make our 26-man roster, but it can't hurt to have a little more depth in camp. So we're going to go ahead and draft him. Auto draft until our next pick. And there's still some interesting pitchers out there. Some, if you're just kind of looking purely at the ratings, Franco Elman out of Cuba is interesting to me, looking at his ratings. I just don't like the greed, the bad work ethic, the low adaptability. And I don't think he's a difference maker. Another guy in the Mets organization, Phil Bickford, is the same thing. I kind of like his pitching profile, but he's even got a worse personality. Just not worth the headache as far as I'm concerned. So the scouting director isn't suggesting that we do anything right now. I still may bring another body into camp. And here in the second round, we're going to bring in another potential right-handed reliever, Carlos Rodriguez. He's actually listed as a starter. Maybe he becomes a starter. He does have a potential 5-pitch arsenal that's pretty versatile. I don't love that he's a right-hander with extreme fly ball tendencies, who looks like he doesn't necessarily have great movement on his pitches in terms of keeping the ball in the ballpark in Yankee Stadium. That doesn't necessarily sound like a perfect combination. And he's only made it as high as AAA for one game a couple years ago. But he's at least a guy that looks like he's got some potential. So we're going to go ahead and bring him into camp as well. I don't know if either of these pitchers are going to make the team, but it's depth in case we have some injuries, and who knows what we think about him after we get to see him in camp and scout him up close and personal. And we've simmed ahead past the Rule 5 now to the first day of winter. Still Canning and Giolito are unsigned. And for those of you who haven't watched me before this Yankees series or before OOTP 25 came out, spent a lot of time over the last year on a expansion league series with a team in Buffalo. And during that series, I had turned off player storylines. But I've got him back on now, and Miguel Amaya is asking us to start that charity. So we're going to spend a little bit of extra money since we've got money to burn right now, and it will make Amaya happy. And it will definitely, based on my previous experience, it will also help give us a boost to some of the financial aspects of the game in terms of I believe it's the fan interest, which we don't really need a bump in. We don't really need a bump in anything, but I don't mind spending Mr. Steinbrenner's money. So we're going to go and start a charity with Miguel Amaya here. And we finally got Griffin Canning signed, so that is positive. And we also got Lucas Giolito signed today. The fans not happy that we let Cody Morris go. His control had been an issue. We talked about this, I believe, in the last episode, that if, as long as he's not giving up homers and walking batters, everything with him is great, but not the type of pitcher that we wanted. So the fans aren't happy that he's moved on to the Cardinals. But with Canning and Giolito on board, I really like our rotation of Snell, Cole, Rodon, Canning, and Giolito, and feel that with guys like Will Warren, Chris Bubich, we certainly have guys who could start for us in a pinch if we needed to. And we've still got money if we want to make other moves this offseason. And the Yankees have announced our new charity with Miguel Amaya, and hopefully that'll help offset some of the fan angst associated with the departure of Cody Morris. So we're closing in on the end of the calendar year of 2025. As I mentioned, we've still got money to spend, even with the big contribution that we made to start that charity. Edwin Diaz still on the market, still looking for really big money. Take a look at the batters who are available, and Tommy Edman, who we were somewhat interested in, is still out there, and we could certainly afford. But we're not going to jump at anything right now. We've added a new catcher in Amaya. We've added a new center fielder in Varsho. And we've added fourth and fifth starters with Canning and Giolito. So it's already been a pretty eventful and impactful offseason. I think there's a chance that one or both of the pitchers we picked in the Rule 5 draft could be competing for a middle relief or long relief job on our team. So I feel like there's a fair amount of new talent and fresh blood on this roster. So I don't think we're going to go crazy right now, but if there's quality players who are still available in a couple of months and the prices are even better than they are today, there could be something more for us to do. And we've simmed ahead now into January, to the start of the international free agent signing period. Since this game was started before any of the patches were out, there is just incredible level of talent in international amateur free agency. You look at the picture here, Ramiro Pantoja. Stuff could be off the map with plus movement and outstanding control, brilliant stamina, and brilliant at holding on runners. And he looks like conceivably he could have a 3 to 5 pitch arsenal of incredible pitches. So certainly looks like he could be a very interesting left-handed starter, but there's also just some stupid talent available among the hitters as well. And three of my favorites among the pitchers are Jesus Godinez, center fielder from the Dominican, plus contact, plus gap power, plus power, a decent eye, 60 range in the outfield. I think he could be a big-time player. Jesus Silva is a shortstop that I love. Excellent contact, well above average power, going to draw walks, plus gap power. Looks like a very versatile, high-quality defensive player with the high leadership, work ethic, and intelligence. So he's a dazzling prospect as well. Juan Medrano is another guy, center fielder we've spent a lot of time looking at. Potentially good contact, but off the charts, close to off the charts gap power, really good power and eye as well. Another guy with good outfield range, a high work ethic. If I was going to be playing this game long enough that these players would actually be relevant to me, I'd probably spend a little more time thinking about this and strategizing and figuring out a way to get multiple of these incredible prospects into our organization. But Ramiro Pantoja is just an off-the-charts pitching prospect, and we're not going to fool around with him. We're going to offer him every penny that we have to offer and try to bring him on board. And if we don't, there will probably be some pretty high quality players, perhaps some of the guys that I even mentioned already, that we'll be able to pivot to. And perhaps not surprisingly, Pantoja has gotten a $5.7 million offer from the A's, so we're not going to be able to compete with that. So we are going to have to pivot to somebody else. And among the batters, I really like the shortstop, Jesus Silva. We've got a strong relationship with him, plus bat, plus glove. Love the leadership, work ethic, and intelligence trifecta. Says he's only looking for $2.24 million, but we're not going to fool around with him either. Offer him every penny we can and see if we can land him. And unfortunately, with both of these guys, we're bumping up against teams that have been able to offer them more money than we can. But fortunately for us, there's a lot of fish in the sea in these very deep pools. We're going to pivot back to Jesus Godinez. Offer him every penny we can as well. And eventually we'll land one of these whales. I'm sure of it. And we did fortunately end up getting our third choice, Jesus Godinez, signed, but a guy with potentially 60 contact, 70 power, who's got above average outfield range, is a pretty solid third option. So he will join Helmut among the top prospects at our international complex. Again, I don't think we're going to be actually playing with any of these players. We will be beginning our long-term play in OOTP 25 with a much more challenging team than the Yankees, probably sometime in early April after there's been another patch or two released and some of the quirky things like the crazy quality of international amateur free agents is tamped down a bit. So before we finish up the episode, we'll take a quick look at what's been going on with our development lab. We had a few of our younger prospects in there. Chase Hampton, one of the top pitching prospects, working on better movement with him. He's frustrated there. But Helmut Bernstein, our international amateur free agent acquisition from a year ago, is on track to hopefully make some progress with plate discipline, as is Carter Smith, who was our first-round pick in this past year's draft. Looking at the 5 major league guys, some more challenging things going on, working on strength and conditioning with both Judge and Amaya. And with 3 to 4 weeks left, Judge is on track in terms of his progress. That could be positive. He's fragile physically. I'm not sure exactly what an improvement there would look like. But given that we still have 7 years at $40 million a pop on the books with Judge, anything we can do to ensure that he's in the lineup more often would be positive. Actually, it's $40 million a year for 6 years that's left at this point, but you get my point. He's a player who's going to be he's basically in his mid-30s at this point, and we've got a long and expensive financial commitment to him. So hopefully we'll be able to maybe make him a little sturdier and more durable and less injury prone through this program that he's been going through in the development lab this offseason. And we'll find out the results of the development lab. We'll find out what happens to this team in spring training. And we'll find out if there's any additional signings that we make before the beginning of the year in our next episode. Taking a look at the batters who are available. Tommy Edman is still out there looking for less money. And he's a guy that we do have the money to potentially bring on board. Pretty much could bring on board just about anybody at this point who's still out there. Bo Bichette could be another option as well if we want to just kind of really have a very versatile infield. Pitching-wise, Edwin Diaz still out there, still looking for wacky money. So that's probably not going to ultimately work. But there's certainly some other pitchers that could help our bullpen, and the prices on many of them are getting much more reasonable. So there's definitely some things for us to investigate, and we will be doing that in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.